Hey, how you getting on? It's Speaker Voldemort, and today's the day! Today's the day we finally get to check out the Eminence Karnivore. And if you want to know how this speaker sounds and how it compares to a really nice sounding Vintage 30, you're going to want to watch this video. Right, I've been in this guitar speaker niche for at least 2 years at this point, I think. And in that time, I've probably done about 30 different videos on guitar speakers. I'm not sure. There'll be a playlist down there. You can count them if you want. But I don't remember there ever being a hype for a new speaker as big as the hype for the Karnivore. I don't remember the hype for the DV77 being this big. I don't remember the hype for the Lichtlem Audio LCFR 150 being this big. People are really keen on this speaker. People really want this. And I was one of the very few lucky people to actually receive a promo Karnivore for a video. So I guess this means this needs to be considered a sponsored video. I'm not going to treat this speaker any differently than the other speakers I've demoed. It's going to go in my Marshall, where I'm going to compare it to a Vintage 30, just close miking with Shure SM57s using some of my mics. And then it's going to go in a Hesu 1x12, where I'll be reamping a riff for some room sounds compared to a Vintage 30 using an Austrian Audio OC818. So same as always. The only thing that Kohle told me was to maybe add a high and low cut filter. I'm going to include that in this video for one section, and I'm going to include it going forward for every other speaker. I've always looked to improve these speaker videos. That just seems like a logical improvement for my speaker videos going forward. But enough about that. What exactly am I going to do? So I'm going to be putting the Karnivore in this side of my Marshall 1960 AV next to a Celestion Vintage 30 from the year 2024. A very nice and smooth sounding Vintage 30. All speakers in this cab are 8 ohms. I converted this cab to 8 ohms. Both speakers get mic'd up with Shure SM57s. The Vintage 30 where the dust cap meets the cone, that's the sweet spot for this speaker in this cab. And the Karnivore will get mic'd up in the same relative position with a Shure SM57 at first. But if the Karnivore turns out to have a different sweet spot, I still need to test that. I'll be moving the microphone to that sweet spot later on in the video. You'll be able to tell what position you're listening to from writing on the screen. And to help you assess if the Karnivore is a speaker for you, I'm going to provide you with some free IRs to download, one for the Celestion Vintage 30, and however many Karnivore IRs I use mic positions for. So if there's 2 microphone positions for the Karnivore in this video, you'll get 2 IRs for that to download it. And if you like those free IRs, there'll be an IR pack on my Patreon for $5 as well. So check that out if you want. That helps me a lot. After that, I'll be putting the Karnivore in the aforementioned Hesu 1x12 and reamp a riff. And then I'll meet you back for some final thoughts. Now, I need to get the Karnivore in this cab, find out where its sweet spot is, and then we'll do a playthrough with a few of my amps. Yeah, I'll just be playing some riffs and switching back and forth in the video between the V30 and the Karnivore. One last thing before we go, I'll be miking up the Karnivore in 2 different positions for this video, so you'll get 2 IRs to download. The reference position, obviously, where the dust cap meets the cone, same as the Vintage 30. I think that sounds great, but I think it sounds equally good slightly further outside. I couldn't decide which I prefer, so I'll let you decide. Right, I'm going to move the mic slightly further outside for the alternative position. Hold on a sec. All right, that should do it for the playthrough. Let's check out the room sounds, and I'll meet you back here for my final thoughts. So, what do you think of the Eminence Karnivore? Tell me in the comments down below. I want to discuss this with you. I'd love to have a chat. Check out the free IRs I provide, and if you like those, remember I have an IR pack on my Patreon available for a $5. So, what do I think of the Eminence Karnivore? Well, I'm biased. I like Kristian Kohle a great deal. He's been very kind to me. He's a speaker enthusiast like myself, and he's kind of kicked open the door a bit for the stuff I do on YouTube with guitar speakers anyway, and I think I said that even in the interview with him. So yeah, there's a great bit of admiration there, and I wish him all the success in the world. But even if I try to find something wrong with this speaker, I can't really find anything. It's a very pleasant sounding speaker to my ears. It's not too far off from a nice sounding vintage 30, and I think Kristian even said something like that to me, that he was looking for a British voice speaker, but with maybe some more low-end beef and some high-end that you can sculpt away if you want for recording purposes, but which would be a lot of fun in the room. Now, the frequency response graphs, they looked kind of similar to that at the vintage 30. The most obvious difference was in the high mids, where the Karnivore leaves a little more space, which makes the sound a little more balanced, less honky than the Vintage 30. How that would affect the mix tones, I can't really assess. I'm not a mix engineer, but the speaker sounds cool to me. One thing that wasn't so clear from the frequency response graphs was the difference in low end. To my ears, the Karnivore does sound much beefier in the low end. It's a much thicker sounding speaker, which I personally like. And if you don't like that, just apply a high pass filter and you're good, which was what Kristian intended with that. The high end, in my opinion, is where it needs to be. And no offense to Eminence, I think Kristian and Eminence kind of fixed what I personally didn't like so much about the Eminence. If we look at that 5 to 6 kilohertz region, that infamous frequency band that we talked so much about during the Vintage 30 quest, which was the biggest differentiating factor between the smooth sounding Vintage 30s of the early 2000s and thankfully the current ones, was that those generated lower sound pressure levels in that range. And with the Eminence speakers I've tested so far, they have all been very pulled back in that frequency range. The Governor, for example, if I remember correctly, had significantly lower sound pressure levels there than even my favorite Vintage 30 from the year 2000. Same with the DV77, that was very pulled back there too, and in my opinion, maybe a little too pulled back. So the speakers tended to sound a little dark. The Eminence Karnivore, though, is right where it needs to be. It's very close to the 5 to 6 kilohertz characteristics of those nice sounding Vintage 30s. So fair play to Kristian and Eminence. They nailed it. Yeah, I think the speaker is going to sell like hotcakes regardless of what I say. I think that's it. I think I want to get a second one to put in a 4x12 cab with 2 other speakers. Yeah, if you want to help me, check out the affiliate links down below or check out my Patreon so I can get one. Yeah, I never know how to end these videos. I feel very awkward. So thank you for watching and hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.